Well, hello, Maddie. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So this is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. Most of the time we have our videos on DC Legends or any other kind of superhero stuff out there. And so what I thought I was going to do first today is I was going to take Maddie back in time to my childhood. And I'm going to give her a Toy Story. And it's a Toy Story of Daddy's whenever I was a little boy. And the toys that I played with whenever I was really little. So let's start off, and our story is going to start in the year of 1984. In 1984, Daddy was 5 years old. So whenever I was 5 years, and how old are you now, Maddie?
6.
You're 6. Well, just last year you were 5 years old, weren't you?
Yeah.
And you like playing with toys, don't you? Yeah.
Still do.
You still do? All right. Well, I'm going to show you some of the toys that Daddy played with whenever I was 5 years old.
But you still play with toys.
I still play with toys. That's a good point. All right. Well, let's take a look now. Well, back at that time, there was a TV show called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And what was really cool about that was this was one of the very first superheroes or heroes of any kind that Daddy ever saw whenever I was little. And I really liked He-Man because He-Man had blonde hair just like Daddy. And he was big and strong, and I wanted to be big and strong just like He-Man. And Daddy had really blonde hair whenever I was a little kid, just like you have bright blonde hair now too, don't you? Yeah. All right. Well, He-Man was a hero that protected Castle Grayskull. You see Castle Grayskull back in the back there?
It looks like a school.
It is, yeah, Grayskull, yeah. And he rode on Battle Cat, and that was his, that was Cringer whenever he wasn't a very strong cat. But what would happen was He-Man would change him from a cowardly cat into a very strong battle cat. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So let's see how he did that. Well, this is what he looked like whenever he wasn't He-Man. He was Prince Adam. So you know how, like, Superman has a secret identity and he turns into...
Like
Clark Kent, yeah. So whenever he's not Superman, he's Clark Kent. Well, that's the same thing it was for He-Man. He-Man was Prince Adam. And what he would do is, you see that sword that he has in his hand there?
It kind of looks like a little wand.
Yeah, well, what he would do is he would take his sword out and he would say, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power." And then he would turn into He-Man just like that.
Cool.
All that power would come to him, and take a look. Look what it did. His sword would light up.
It looks like waves.
Yeah, kind of waves would come in, and it would turn him from Prince Adam, like that, into He-Man.
Amen.
That's right.
I guess what you would do whenever you were playing with him, you would be like, "The power of Grayskull, yeah!"
Exactly. That's exactly what I would do. And I would take a sword out of my back and I'd put it up in the air real high and I would say, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power." But it didn't sound like that whenever I was little. It sounded like, "By the power of Grayskull." So He-Man would fight against Skeletor. And Skeletor is the guy in the blue and the purple there with a skeleton face. And just like all good guys, he would fight Skeletor and he would beat him. And he'd knock the sword out of his hands. And then before too long, you would see He-Man winning the battle. Just like all good guys do.
What does Grayskull turn into whenever he is not bad guy?
Oh, well, it always stays Grayskull. And so that's one of the cool things about Castle Grayskull is it was always there and it was always able to provide He-Man with his power anytime that he needed it. Well, before too long, they came out with toys based off of that cartoon that Daddy would watch. And so they had all these different kind of things. Look at the Castle Grayskull in the back there. And they had all these different toys. And they had He-Man. And you could fight He-Man against Skeletor and against all the bad guys that he had. Take a look at all those cool toys that they had back then. And there he was, He-Man riding on his battle cat. And he had all of his friends with him, and they would all fight against all the bad guys. Pretty cool, huh?
I bet you would do with the bad guys. You would be like, "Get off of that thing and fight me now!"
That's right, I would. I would fight them, and it would be cool. And so, as you can see, there was a bunch of different kind of toys that were out at that time. They had Castle Grayskull, and they had the evil lair. I don't even remember what that one was called. And they had Skeletor and He-Man. Down there, you can see there's He-Man and Skeletor and all the cool things. And there's He-Man on his Battle Cat again.
Is that a bumblebee right
Yeah, like kind of a bumblebee. I don't remember if he was a good guy or a bad guy, to be honest with you. But this is what it looked like. It was so cool. They had the advertisement out that time, and this is what He-Man looked like. He had an axe, and he had his shield, and of course he had his sword that you could use to turn him into He-Man. And it said the power that separates the men from the toys. So you knew if you were playing with that, you were playing with a really cool toy. Well, this is what it looked like, Maddi, on the shelf. You could go get it, and it would look like that. And you could take it home, and you could use He-Man, and you could play with He-Man at your house.
You have He-Man in your closet.
Yeah, I want to get a He-Man, that's for sure. I don't have one of these yet. I would love to get one, but I did have it, and at the time, this is what it looks like. Take a look at that.
Whoa. Did you take a picture of your toy whenever you were?
No, I didn't actually take any pictures of my toys whenever I was little, but these are some of the pictures that I found online that I thought I would show you and show you what He-Man looks like. Pretty cool, huh?
Uh-huh. Do you remember your, kid days back then?
Yeah, I remember a couple things from whenever I was a little kid.
How about you tell us?
Well, that's what this whole thing is all about. I'm gonna tell you some of the toys that Daddy played with whenever I was little. All right, so there is He-Man, and all the different things that comes with He-Man there.
He has skinny legs, and then his body is all strong.
He's all big and strong, right?
At the top, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he looks like riding on Battle Cat.
Yeah.
So He-Man was pretty cool. That was one of Daddy's very first ever toys. So we're staying in 1984, and again, Daddy was 5 years old. And at that time, He-Man wasn't the only thing that Daddy watched. There was another cartoon that was out at that time, and that one was called The Transformers. Robots in Disguise.
I remember that.
Yeah, you've seen the movie of Transformers, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it started out as a cartoon, just like that.
What was the first thing? What was the first ever movie you saw of Transformers? What was the first ever action?
The first one was a cartoon, and it looked just like that. And it had the Autobots versus the Decepticons. And my favorite Autobot at that time wasn't it wasn't Bumblebee. It was actually Optimus Prime. The blue and the red and the white. He was my favorite. There he is, the leader of the Autobots. He would lead them against the bad guys, the Decepticons. And I loved watching that. He-Man and Transformers was what I was watching at that time. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just the coolest cartoon ever. And there he is, leading his troops into battle against the evil Decepticons. And then the Autobots would lead the way, led by Optimus Prime.
I bet you would be like with your toys, with your first, with the one back then.
Mm-hmm.
The other picture.
Mm-hmm.
You would be like, this way to go to fight to the bad guys.
What does he say right here? Say it again.
This way to go fight to the bad guys. He looks like that.
That's exactly what he said in that part. You're absolutely right. I remember him saying that. He said, this way to fight to the bad guys. You're right. That's exactly what he said right there. And then this is, soon thereafter, I found out they came out with toys for the Transformers. And so Daddy got his He-Man from whenever he was watching the He-Man show. And Nana and Poppy, got me, that's your grandma and your grandpa, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they got me my own Optimus Prime, and he looked just like that.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. I still remember. That's one of the one Christmas toys that I will remember for the rest of my life. Is I remember on Christmas Day opening up Optimus Prime, and he looked just like that.
What did Optimus Prime look like whenever he wasn't like Optimus Prime?
Oh, well, let's take a look. So when you opened up the box, it would look like that, and you take him out, and he was a truck, and he had a trailer with him. And that's what the trailer would open up, and you would see a little rotor in there, and he would drive around, and you'd see a little thing that would shoot people, and pew, 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 pew. It would go pew, 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 pew. And that's how you'd fight. And then you'd transform him, and he would look like that. Doesn't that look cool?
Yeah.
Robots in disguise.
I bet it would be like, ooh.
Here we go. I think that's the sound they made. Something like that, yeah. And then he would come with a little sword. Or he'd come with a gun, I mean. And you could never get his hands to stay on, because once you transformed him back into a truck, you wouldn't have his hands there anymore. So you'd always wind up losing his hands, or you wind up losing the gun or something. But that was him, and I would play all the time, and I loved my Optimus Prime, and I loved my He-Man, and those were my favorite two toys whenever it was back in 1984, and I was only 5 years old. And there he is. He looked like that whenever he was a truck, and then whenever he transformed into Optimus Prime.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yep, that's the sound I would make. Pew, 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 pew. All right, so let's fast forward one more year, and now we're going to go to 1985.
Whoa.
Yeah, Daddy was 6 years old at this point.
I don't think you would remember that.
I was the same age as you. I was 6 years old at this point.
I am 6 years old.
Yeah, and I still watched He-Man and I still watched Transformers, but then there was a new cartoon that came out that Daddy fell in love with, and it was G.I. Joe, the Real American Heroes. And Daddy loved Duke, and I like Scarlet and Roadblock. But the one character that was my favorite out of all of them, there it is, G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. And I would watch this all the time on Saturday mornings. It wasn't like I could just watch it anytime like you can now. You have your own channels that are dedicated to the Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. But I had to wait for Saturday morning, and I had to get up early just to watch G.I. Joe. But my favorite one was Snake Eyes. And Snake Eyes was so cool, because not only did he have a cool visor, and he was a ninja, and he was stealthy, and you didn't know when he was going to come to attack, but he also had a wolf that would come along with him wherever he went. Yeah, and that's what he looked like. He was cool. The cool thing about him was he didn't say anything. He was always silent. You never knew what he was going to do because he was a ninja. And before too long, just like all the rest of the toys that Daddy had at that time, whenever I watched cartoons, of course, they came out with a line of toys themselves. And right there, number 4 is Snake Eyes.
So Snake Eyes didn't even make a sound when he was fighting?
No, he was always silent. And look at this. This is what he looked like still inside the package. And he came with his little wolf up there. Isn't that cool? Yeah, I loved Snake Eyes. He was my favorite. And so you can see what he looked like with his wolf there. Isn't that cool? A couple more pictures of him there. And then whenever you got him out of the package, they always came with these little cards on the back. And if you cut out the card on the back, you got to keep it. And he came with his sword, and he came with a machine gun, and of course he came with his wolf. And a little backpack to put it all in. What I always thought was so cool about those backpacks is they would go right under their back, but he also had a place for his sword to slide right into. I thought that was a really cool little touch that they did.
Whenever you were a kid, you would do this with their backpack. Time to put away.
Time to put away the sword. That's right. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's what he looks like right there. Whenever he had his machine gun and his wolf and his sword and his backpack on all at the same time.
Whoa.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Look at that. Pretty cool character. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to fast forward. We've taken a look at 3 of the characters. Now we're going to fast forward to 1988. At this point, Daddy was 9 years old. Almost just a little bit younger than your brother is now.
Yeah.
And at that time, my favorite toy was
Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Heroes in a Half Shell, Turtle Power. And so I loved the Ninja Turtles at that time. And the Ninja Turtles were so cool. You had Donatello, Leonardo, Raphael, and Michelangelo. And they were so cool. They would fight together, and they were all ninjas. And they all had their own special ninja tool, or their ninja weapons that they would use. Raphael would have his sais, and Michelangelo the nunchucks, and the bow would be used by Donatello, and the swords would be used by, the katana swords would be used by Leonardo.
Where's Mikey?
Well, Mikey's on the far left there. He's the one with the yellow or orange on, and he was the one that was the party dude. And so he was really cool. And there they are with all of their special ninja weapons jumping into battle ready to fight the Shredder and the Foot Clan. But even though they fought, they were still teenagers and made time to eat pizza. Because pizza is their favorite.
Mikey!
Yeah, and just like all of the things that I'm showing you today, they all came out with their own toy line.
Like I thought.
Yep, and there's the toy line right there. Pretty cool, huh?
I see Mikey.
Michelangelo. And you can see they actually did it wrong on here. If you look real close, they had the orange on Donatello, and they had Michelangelo in purple. They kind of messed it up there. I thought that was kind of funny whenever I looked real close at that. And then, of course, they came out with their own turtle van, and that was so cool. But my favorite character at that time, Maddi, was Raphael. Because Raphael was cool but rude.
Yeah.
And so he was my favorite. I liked Raphael.
He never said please or thank you.
Yeah, he was kind of rude, that's for sure.
But he was still funny.
But he was still funny and still a cool character. And so I liked him. He was one of my favorites for sure. And so this was the next toy that I got as a child that I absolutely loved and played with for hours and hours and hours. And just like the G.I. Joe, this one came with the card on the back, and you could cut the card out, and you can take all the weapons off, and you would have Raphael to play with. And I always did. He was my favorite one. I had all four of the turtles. No, they didn't have pizza. That was one of the weapons that he had. They were all weapons. They have the ninja stars, and of course he has his size that he uses. And of course they had their own turtle van, and Daddy had all of those at one time. Pretty cool, huh?
Uh-huh.
And there they are, all four of them together. But definitely Raphael was my favorite, and I liked playing with Raphael. I liked playing with all my Ninja Turtles, and that was one of my favorite toys whenever I was little. Pretty cool little picture of him going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But yep, there's Raphael, my favorite of all the Ninja Turtles, and one of my favorite toys growing up. All right, Maddi, now we're going to fast forward all the way to 1989. And now at this point, Daddy was 10 years old.
Let me guess what movie it is.
What's that?
I don't know.
Well, you're right. It actually wasn't a cartoon, because in the summer of 1989, the entire world was glued to the theaters because they were all going to watch one thing, and that was Batman. And Michael Keaton played Batman, and Jack Nicholson played the Joker. And I loved it. Well, it wasn't Superman at that time. Superman actually came out in 1978. Which was before Daddy was even born. And so I didn't really get a chance to get into that. I got into it much later, but whenever I was 10 years old, I wanted to be Batman, believe it or not, because in the summer of 89, it was all about Batman. And the theaters were taken over by Batman. And there it is. That's what it looked like. Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton. Jack Nicholson played the Joker, and Michael Keaton played Batman. You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. That's what he would say. It was crazy. I loved it though. You could hear the little Beetlejuice voice coming out of him whenever he would do that line. I thought that was kind of cool too. But yeah, Batman owned that summer. That is for sure. And there he is, Michael Keaton playing Batman, and man, I loved it. I loved this movie. I got it on VHS. You don't even know what a VHS is, but I got it on VHS, and I watched it all the time. By the time that it came out for home video, I would watch it all the time on loop, because this was just one of my favorite movies whenever I was younger.
I think a VHS is like a type of
A what?
It's a thing that my brother likes. It's
like a video game?
Yeah, it's something that a video game connects to. It's
what a video game connects to? That's what a VHS is?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Sure, why not? A VHS was, you know how we have Blu-rays and DVDs right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
There you go.
It's like the
It's like that, but they were little squares that you would pop into a VCR. You would put your VHS into your VCR, and then you'd press play, and it would play for you. And so very similar, and it was the first time that home entertainment was able to. We were able to watch movies at home, and so I absolutely loved it. And this was one of the movies that really got me into superheroes, and it was the first time that a superhero movie really took over my thoughts, and I thought, this was really cool. This is what superhero movies are supposed to be like. And now we're in the golden age of superhero movies, and so the movies they make now are much better than back then. So this is what the Batmobile looked like in the movie for the 1989 Batman as well.
Na 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 na. Batman, he fights crime with Superman. They both fight fine together, but sometimes they fight crime against each other.
There you go. I love it. So at that time, we had no idea that there was ever going to be a Batman versus Superman in the movie theaters. We just thought they were just good friends at that time. Then the comic books kind of changed up things, and you had stuff like the Dark Knight that came out, and that really kind of changed the way that people thought about comic books at that time. And you had things like The Killing Joke and all these other kind of graphic novels, or that comic books at that time, and then turned into graphic novels later. But ultimately, that was where people started thinking, these aren't just for kids anymore. And then whenever they came out with the 1989 Batman, that's whenever people knew there was a hunger and a thirst out there for people that really wanted to see the superheroes on the big screen. And now we are reaping the benefits of it today. So there it is, the Batmobile. So cool. I absolutely loved that. And I thought, man, this is just the coolest vehicle ever. And it just didn't get any better than the Batmobile back in 1989. So as our story goes, all of these turned into toys at some point. And I remember they had a WB order form. And whenever you got on your WB order form, you had a chance to order the toys for the movie as well. And the Batman action figure came out at that time.
Oh, cool. And also hats.
And hats as well, of course. And you could order Batman for $5.95 plus $1.95 for shipping and handling, and you could have yourself a Batman toy. And of course, Daddy had to have a Batman toy. That's what it looked like right there. Now you can bring the action home. And this is what it looked like, Maddi. Pretty cool, huh?
Uh-huh.
I loved it. He was able to shoot the batarang out of his, or he was able to shoot the bat rope out of his belt, and then you could connect it to something and make him fly up onto it. He didn't have a whole lot of points of articulation back then, but that didn't matter to me. All I wanted was to have the 1989. I wanted to take it from the movie screen right into my hands and play with it, and sure enough, I got a chance to.
You probably asked Poppy, like, I don't care, I just want the action figure. Please give me the action figure.
I sure did. And that's what it looked like on the back. You could see him throwing up his batarang there and hooking onto something and pulling himself up on it. And so it was super cool. And so once you got him out of the package, this is what he looked like. And you got to play with the Michael Keaton Batman.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. And see right there? See, that's the rope coming out of his belt. All right, so we're going to stay in 1989. And what was so cool is, who is Daddy's favorite superhero? Superman, of course. That's my favorite superhero of all time. And what was really cool, I didn't really have any Superman toys at that time. But what happened was they were able to re-release the superheroes that I couldn't get my hands on whenever I was little. And they re-released Superman! Back in like 1984 or 1983, they came out with the Superpowers line. And that was before Daddy was able to get his hands on any of those. And you could squeeze their legs together and he would do a super punch and knock out Lex Luthor. They had all of the superheroes, including Batman and Aquaman and the Flash and all of them there. And it was super cool, but Daddy never got any of them. But fortunately, because Batman got into the theaters in 1989, they re-released some of the superheroes. And guess which one they re-released, Maddi? Superman! And there it is. That was the one that they re-released. and he had a kryptonite ring with him as well. And you could hold that kryptonite ring right up to the Superman and it would make him fall down. And so you had your own kryptonite ring that you got to wear anytime you wanted. But this is what the Superman looked like that they re-released at that time. And as you can see on the back, what it says there is you could hold the kryptonite ring up to Superman, it would make him fall over. Isn't that cool? Because he would get weak from the kryptonite that would be too close to him.
It would actually do it?
Yeah.
So it's made out of batteries?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's magic. What do you think?
Half and half.
Half and half? Half batteries, half magic?
Yeah.
All right, I'll take that. So it was pretty cool, that was for sure. And I loved having my own Batman and Superman, and at that time I didn't have them fighting each other. I had them working together to take down people like the Joker and the Riddler and the Penguin and Lex Luthor and Dr. Freeze and all the other bad guys that came along. Of course, the Joker. And this is what the Superman looked like whenever you got him out of the package. He was so cool. Look at that.
Cool.
Then he looked super strong.
Look at all those muscles that
That's right. He was so strong. Looked super cool, too.
He was the strongest man alive.
That's right. Still is. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and able to leap over tall buildings in a single bound.
I thought the Flash is the faster.
Well, he's faster than a speeding bullet, but not faster than the Flash. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. That's right. And there he was. It was so cool to have my own Superman to play with. And I'd make him fly through the air. Whoosh, and save the day. And use his heat vision and his freeze breath.
Oh no, there's a kid. Help. I got you.
Exactly. That's exactly what I would do. All right, so now we're going to fast forward one more time all the way to 1991. And this is the last toy that I'm going to show you, Maddie. At that time, let's see, I would have been about 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old at this point. And at this point, I was watching X-Men on the TV show. Da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na,
I would never know.
No, you haven't seen that one, I would bet. But yeah, and so they had all of my favorite X-Men in there.
Whoa.
Yeah, they had Storm and Jubilee and Cyclops and Beast, Professor Xavier, and my favorite, Wolverine. But here they are. Gambit was there too, and I loved it. I loved the whole thing. I loved the whole show. Again, Saturday mornings, I'd wake up and watch this, and it would be so cool to get to sit down and watch the X-Men.
My brother used to like
Wolverine, yeah, because he had the claws, of course. And there they are, Beast and Professor Xavier. And like I said, my favorite, and of course they had all the really cool comic book stories, like they would do the Phoenix Saga, which was so cool. I loved watching the Phoenix Saga on a cartoon.
What is that fire that's a bird that's in the sky?
Oh, that's her. That's the Phoenix Saga. That was Jean Grey that turned into the Phoenix. And she was so powerful. And that's what made her so cool, was they had to fight against their friend who turned bad.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
But my favorite at that time was Wolverine. I'm the best at what I do, bub. And that's right. He was the best at what he did, too. And there he was. He'd use his claws, and he would claw at you and just snick, snick, snick. And he would just cut at you and slice at you. And you couldn't do anything to stop him, because he had his mutant healing power that would always get him back in the fight really quickly. But of course, as we were talking about with all of these cartoons, they all came out with their own toy line. And so they had Storm, and they had Nightcrawler, and they had Magneto, and they had Archangel, and they had Apocalypse. But the one that I liked was Wolverine. And so here they are. Here's some of the toys that came out from the cartoon that had happened at the same time.
I don't think Harley was in your days.
Nope, she wasn't. But this was, and this is Wolverine. And this is what it looked like whenever he was in the package. And so you could go to the store and you could get your own Wolverine to play with. And he was in the brown and orange suit, which is what I watched, which is what I was looking at in the comics. So I thought it was so cool that I got the brown and orange one from the comic books. And so this is what he looked like right there, Maddi. Isn't that cool? And so this is what it looked like on the back there. Of course, I got a Magneto to fight against Wolverine, and it was so cool. It was so much fun. I loved playing with that. And he had those little claws. Look at these little claws on the bottom there. You could pop it out, and he had a mask that would go off and on, and you could take it off, take that mask off there, and you could use it as a ring. And you could wear his Wolverine helmet as a ring. And so you see those little claws right there? They would pop out, and it was so cool because his arms would pop out these claws, and you could use him to fight. And so those little hinges there, they would just pop out, and then he'd have those little springs in that'd pop out his claws for you to play with. And there he was. Pretty cool, huh?
This to the bad guys.
He goes snick, snick, and they'd pop out. So there it is, Maddi. Starting with He-Man and going on to Optimus Prime. And then we talked about Snake Eyes, and we talked about Raphael. And after that we talked about Batman and Superman, and then finally we talked about Wolverine at the very end. And so what I'm going to do, Maddi, is this is the introduction to a little series that is going to be reclaiming my childhood. And I'm going to buy all of these, as many of them as I can. I'm going to try to keep on card, and we're going to do some live openings and take a look at these. And then I've told you a little story about each one of these one by one, and then we're going to go back in, and you and I are going to look at these, and I'm going to try to keep them closed and show them to you just like the same way that I got them whenever I was little. I want to show them to you also. Isn't that cool? All right, so Daddy's going to be reclaiming his childhood and going back and trying to get all of these toys. Some of them I'm going to try to keep on card. Some of them I'm going to get loose. And the ones that I get that aren't on card, I'm going to let you look at them and let you play with them. And you can tell me what you think and see. We'll try to compare them against some of the toys that are out there right now. And you can see how Daddy got to play with some toys that were a little different than the ones you have right now. All right, Maddi. Well, that's probably going to do it for tonight. And we just do something a little bit different and show y'all a little story that I was going to tell my little girl Maddi about whenever I was a little boy and the toys that I played with. And so, Maddi, there's always 3 things we want people to do at the end of our video. What are those 3 things?
Subscribe.
Subscribe to our channel.
Drop a like.
Drop a like.
And leave a comment.
And leave us a comment to let us know, did you like the little story that I told Maddi? Are you excited about the toys that I'm going to be bringing in and taking a look with all of you? And y'all can rejoin me going back and looking at our childhood. Is there a toy that you used to play with whenever you were little that you wish you could go back and get also? And maybe you did. Let me know in the comment section below. What was your favorite toy whenever you were a kid? And were you able to go back and get that toy? Do you still have that toy? Are you going to go get you? Do we inspire you to go get one of your old toys from the past and bring it back so that you can have a little bit of your childhood back again? Or maybe you are a child and maybe this is reminding you of the toys that you love to play with right now. Let us know, what is your favorite toy? What did you play with? What are you playing with? And what are you collecting if you're a little bit older as well? So, Maddi, is there anything you want to say to the people at home before we go?
Bye, and thanks for watching. God bless you. Have a great night. Don't forget to drop us that like.
You heard her.